Welcome back. So, as you know, this is the beginning of day 2, and we have a very exciting guest as our first guest.
And they haven't arrived yet, so I'm just filling that spot,
really?
right?
Okay. Yeah, so this is Samme Allen. We're waiting for the other guest. No, we're very excited to have you here on the show. You were a big part of MPI's Edge of Monday.
Yeah.
So tell the audience a bit about what that experience was like and kind of what you talked about.
I ran 2 sessions, one on behalf of MPI and one for IMEX. And I mean, there were 700 participants, despite all the challenges with flights and weather. So it was amazing to see that.
Yeah.
I delivered it was a bite-sized program of the MPI certificate into diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
So it's a 4-hour certificate, but I condensed it with the help of the team into half an hour, a bite-sized version. Really interesting, really, really well received. It's a topic on every event planner's lips right now.
I think that it is something that we've kind of been afraid to talk about in the past, and finally we're at that point where you can't not talk about it because it's so important on the minds of the attendees who are coming to the events.
We've been on the periphery.
Yeah.
And I think that, organizations and associations like PCMA, like MPI, have been encouraging these inclusive pieces of activity at events. But I think as an industry, we have been hugely behind. And MPI produced some really fascinating research that stated 40% of event planners who were interviewed for the survey don't feel that they've got enough education. Yet there are so many small, tiny things that we can do, and we're probably doing them now, but we just need to do them smarter.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change in terms of you don't need massive budgets. It's just having a paradigm shift,
Right.
and suddenly your audience and your attendees are going to be more engaged because they're feeling more welcome.
Yeah, and I think it's not even something that is necessarily an intentional thing that you notice, but when it's there, it's obvious, And so for those who don't know what you do on a regular basis, tell the audience a bit about your experience.
Well, I live the dream right now, Alex, I have to say. I'm a professional MC, moderator, and facilitator. And I now blog as the life of the female MC. And actually, a friend of mine said, Sam, you're an excellent, which is a lovely compliment by this gentleman. He said, you're a great facilitator. You bring out the best of your audiences. You get work as an MC on your credits. And I said, but you're saying that as a man. There are not many MCs who are female in our industry who do this for a full-time job. We get speakers who come in and moderate because they want to sell their speaking gigs and, there's more MC work. But actually, this is an industry that I want to promote for more women.
Mm-hmm.
We are naturally empathetic.
Yes.
So this is the best job in the world to be because I can just be authentic, be myself. And then I get to do this with great big audiences to help them get more engaged with their content and their speakers. What's not to love?
Right. So from the perspective of working with your clients, do you find that they are hiring you intentionally to add that diversity factor, or do you find that it's just we want
Samme
Samme.
Allen, yeah. I'd love to say it's purely because of my fabulous talents as an MC, which are great, samallen.com. No, a bit of both.
Yeah.
I think there are some of my clients, certainly I've got a big medical event, 2,500 delegates next week.
Wow.
It's not because of me, one of their agendas is gender parity.
Mm.
They're a medical association where a huge number of their audience, their participants are women. Their senior committee members are men, and this is just how life is. But they're recognizing the need to reflect their audience on stage. And this is what we need to be thinking about as meeting planners, reflecting the attendees.
Mm-hmm.
They need to see the people they are either on stage or in presentations or talked about in that content. So that's where I'm coming in. And I'm hoping that also that they're seeing that as a female MC, it's a totally different reaction and experience.
Yeah.
So, and it's, be diverse. Use female MCs, then use male MCs for different parts of your event. But yeah, I'm seeing that a lot.
So with the education, are you hearing from attendees who maybe aren't used to seeing a woman facilitate or MC that the content is different? Are you getting different responses from the attendees?
I work a lot with the meetings industry, just by nature of the beast. This is my tribe. This is where a lot of my referrals are coming from. I'm getting an awful lot of women coming up and feeling really pleased to see me on stage, not because of me, but because I am reflection of them.
Right.
And I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting people to say, great job, Sam, and we were totally engaged. Thanks for making this meeting or help this meeting become more engaging. But actually, people are coming up and saying, it's great to see a female up on stage. So we need to recognize that, and we need to cheer that.
I think it is something that we can cheer and champion as well. For those who are maybe looking for incorporating more diversity in their meetings, what are some things that event professionals can be doing to be more proactive about that?
Number one is know your attendees better. There are so many different ways, from past data to more detailed event surveys, more specific. If you're asking people questions because you want to make them be more welcomed at your meeting, that they're going to feel more inclusive, they're going to respond to those questions. Yeah. So get that information, understand how your attendees are going to differ, and communicate that. Number two, don't leave it till next year. Make some small changes now, even if it's including through your event communication that you are creating an inclusive policy for this experience, this event. People will recognize that and will feed in. And lastly, I'd say set some smart objectives. 1 or 2 things that you're going to do differently, and measure that via your event evaluation. Get some observers to sort of notice that. Just be a bit more present. Tiny little steps, and we will change the world.
I love that. So from a boardroom perspective, because a lot of people don't realize, who maybe aren't familiar, is that with the meetings industry, we're trying to get the boardrooms and these higher level boards to be more inclusive. Yeah. So how does that affect the meetings industry, and how can we get more diversity at those higher levels?
I'm going to be a little controversial now.
I like it. We like controversy.
Sorry, people. I applaud some of these female initiatives, and I do, and there are some really incredible things going on. But we have to move beyond these all-female panels, and we must have all females. We must have this. Diversity is diversity. There is statistics. There was a report, and I got super excited when it came out, because I'm a geek, in 2015 by McKinsey. With a diverse, ethnically, gender, sexually diverse board of leaders as well as organization, you can increase your revenues by something like 35%. Yeah. This is serious business decisions.
Business decisions, yeah.
This is not about creating just a nice feeling, I'm more welcomed, I'm not in a clique. This is bottom line changes to your P&L. Yeah. So if that's not interesting your board, then I don't know what else is.
Right. And I think there's some confusion in the marketplace also about what inclusivity means. And I don't think that it's just demographics, right? It's also diversity of thought. And so what can you tell our audience about what that looks like?
We MPI, did some research around the ways we differ. And in my session on Monday, I called it Diversity Bingo. We had some discussion around how do your event attendees differ, and we've got over 30 at the moment, and we're still counting. Yeah. So I think, again, I'm going to harp on about know your attendees better, and whatever your attendees are seeing must reflect them. So whether that's our different taste in music. Right. Now, you may really love to hear loud opera music when you come into somewhere, but I really only like hip hop. So how do we recognize that? Sensitivities, allergies. It's not just about physical, sensory, or gender. Right. It's a lot more, and that's what we've got to do. Think a little bit more about our people.
Yeah, I think people instantly, when they hear diversity, jump to gender and race. Yeah. And I think that there has to be an understanding that it's so much more than that.
And be authentic about it. Yeah. I was talking with a super guy who's a project manager, and people are, right, well, we must put somebody of color, and we must put a woman on. Well, don't try, we find these stock images and it looks really fake. Tahira, shares her knowledge. Don't make it fake, make it authentic, and make it true to your audience.
So on the flip side, how do you, or what are your thoughts on tribalization and micro communities within these larger events? Because that idea of making someone feel inclusive can also mean giving them a space where they can meet people who are like them. I think diversity people automatically think different, but there's also a space where I feel included, which means being around people who are like you.
I'm a massive, massive fan of encouraging and finding ways to connect with your tribe in these big events. I think we can see best practice in, again, some of the big association events. We'll see it in WEC in Toronto in, I think, 2 weeks' time. I think it's not long. I've got three different countries to go to.
I need to book my flight.
Yeah, that's just not there. And I think that's through our communications and, again, asking those right questions and actually sharing this information.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have, Alex, and I'm sure half the people who are watching, how many times have we been to an event and we're looking and we're seeing all these cliques and we don't understand them? Actually, we are part of those cliques. We are part of, they're not cliques, they're tribes.
Yeah.
So how, as event organizers, do we create that space, whether it's physical, whether it's via signage or via communication, so that I can find, we've got technology now. There's simply not an excuse not to do this.
Well, and it's funny because I'm glad you brought up the technology, because one of the things as a social media expert is I tell my clients, I say, well, did you ever think of adding a word to the end of your hashtag and having a second hashtag, a secondary hashtag? You can have more than one hashtag for your event. And I'm like, yes, you can. You can reach these micro communities by doing that and having a special hashtag. For example, solo, right? Someone who attends an event who is alone, they're not here with anyone else from their company. Maybe it's their first time, maybe it's not. But they want to meet other people who are in the same boat so that they can kind of create their own tribe at the event. Just add the word solo to the end of your event hashtag, and then that gives a place online for those people to communicate with each other.
It's an awesome thing to do.
And it's fascinating that there's so much technology and capabilities. You can have things, forums and feeds in your app for all these different micro communities as well. But I think, that idea of creating these tribes is also inclusivity.
And if we start doing that, we're always asking the question as event planners on how do we engage pre and post conference. And, Steve did some brilliant research around, about an average of 30% of delegates will engage post conference, which is a shocker, because why are we all doing this? Why are we killing ourselves here, guys, to create these amazing experiences if only 30% of our participants are doing anything with it? We stop using social media. We use that one hashtag, as you say, on the day or over the 3 days of the convention. But actually, what's the community and what's the tribe looking like before? Yeah. And how is that tribe? I mean, it's a simple way. How is that tribe going to keep going when the event is stopped? Isn't that a great way of engaging your community after the event?
Right. Create a LinkedIn group. Right. Like, it's not hard, but it's these little things that we can start to do.
And you got to be consistent with it. I think that's really important, is if you're going to say you're going to have this community, you do need an ambassador. Your community online, I didn't realize I'd know so many people who were joining in. So it's a really nice thing to be part of that tribe, and so excited to have you guys here. Yeah. So I feel like I'm meeting my favorite people. And I'm like, you're all real as well. This is just mega. I know, flesh and blood, and I got hugs and everything.
So I think one last thing I want to talk about is this idea of micro-influencers, because you mentioned these ambassadors, right? So how do you work with, what's a recommendation you can give to event professionals for working with these micro-influencers in their community at their events to create these tribes and be spokespeople for their diversity?
Well, first off, they need to talk to Mariska Kestelou, who is an amazing social media event guru in terms of influencer marketing. So that's a recommendation. She's a super amazing lady. You've got to do your research, because again, people aren't looking at social media feeds to understand who within their communities are these influencers. Right. It's a simple thing. When you ask someone to register, you look at and you ask them for their hashtag, their Twitter handle or their LinkedIn profile. But what are they doing with that? Go and have a look and see that I've got 5,000 followers in the event community, and then reach out to me and ask me to be that ambassador. How many people, when they're asked to be an ambassador, are going to say no? No. I mean, what an honor is that for us all? I mean, this is why ambassador programs and associations work. What are we doing? So again, come back to technology and social media. Yeah. Create those micro communities in that sort of way. And that conversation will be amazing because it's face to face, which always enhances the conversation, but it will keep going until next year or next month when your event is there. You'll grow your community. You're not having to do anything because that's going to grow organically as that tribe.
Right.
Happy days for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's important, making the ask, right? And I think that goes back to that research of knowing your audience, right? If you know your audience, you've done your research, then you know who to make the ask of.
And ask, because, you know, I think certainly maybe it's different in different cultures. As British people, we don't like to ask for anything. Ooh, we just like to apologise a lot. We say sorry. And I'm learning, certainly running my new business, you know, you've got to ask the question, you know, what can we do? How can we do this? Where can we do this? Would you like to be part of it? What's the worst that's going to happen? One of your delegates or one of your potential ambassadors is going to say no.
No.
I think the chances are that that's not going to happen very often. So go, be bold, ask the question.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us. I think we have learned so much here about inclusivity and what that means for the events industry. And we appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I'm sure we'll have you on the show again to talk about this really important topic.
I am just pinching myself. I have to say today is a really auspicious day. Happy birthday to my mum. She's 75 today. I'm not sure she knows what I do, but I get to hang out with awesome people who change the world. So thank you so much for having me.